Engineers moved forward first, hammering planks and stabilizing the long wooden bridge that stretched across the brown water. The crossing began slowly. Wagons creaked onto the bridge. Horses kicked nervously at the boards. Cannons rolled forward one by one, each movement groaning through iron rims and wooden wheels. The vanguard reached the far bank and started forming a camp. Fires were lit. Tents rose. The atmosphere felt almost routine. But beneath the surface, danger was already taking shape. The army was stretched across miles of open ground. Half was on the near bank, half was beginning to gather on the far side, and a thick, bottlenecked crowd waited at the center, trying to cross. If someone struck now, the Ottomans would be split in two, with no way to unite their forces. No one at the crossing believed such a strike was possible. No one imagined Prince Eugene's army was already racing toward them through a forced march that would become legendary. Far away, Eugene's scouts had completed the final piece of the puzzle. They rode through mud, marshland, and forests to bring him the news. The Ottoman army was at the river, crossing, exposed, and unaware. Eugene didn't hesitate. He gave the order to march with everything they had left. His soldiers, already tired, pulled tighter on their belts and pushed forward. They didn't complain. They understood the tone of his command. This was not another day of following the enemy's trail. This was movement with purpose, fast, silent, and dangerous. Serbian militia guided them along narrow, hidden paths. They avoided villages, avoided smoke, avoided any sign that could alert the Sultan's scouts. Over the next 30 hours, they covered 70 miles, a pace that would exhaust fresh troops, let alone men who'd been marching for weeks. Every mile mattered. Every minute mattered. The Habsburg army moved like a shadow, curving behind the Ottoman position. Eugene wanted to strike from the rear where the camp, the bridge, and the greatest confusion would be concentrated. Then, in the middle of this tense advance, a courier arrived from Vienna. The emperor's orders were clear. Be cautious. Avoid unnecessary risks. Do not gamble the army. Eugene read the message once, then put it away. He wasn't being reckless, he was being realistic. If he obeyed, the Ottomans would finish crossing the river, regroup, and strike back with overwhelming force. If he waited even one more night, the chance would be gone forever. This moment, right now, was the only moment where the empire's size worked against it. By late afternoon on September 11th, the Habsburg army could hear distant shouting from the riverbank. They could smell the smoke of campfires. They could see the glow of the late sun reflecting off Ottoman armor. But the Ottomans still didn't see them. The river, the bridge, and the chaos of the crossing blocked their view. What Eugene saw when he reached the final ridge made the decision for him. There, stretched out along the bank, was everything he had been waiting for. Thousands of Ottoman troops crowded together, carts and cannons jammed in narrow paths, the bridge groaning under the weight of men and animals, officers shouting to keep order, and the Sultan himself watching from the far bank, seeing only the movement directly in front of him, not the threat forming behind. The Ottomans believed they were safe. They believed they had time. They believed no enemy could reach them this quickly. And then, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, imperial banners rose over the ridge. At first, a few Ottoman soldiers turned, confused by shapes in the distance. Then more turned. Then the shouting changed. Across the riverbank, a silence spread, the kind of silence that comes not from calm but from shock, when the impossible suddenly becomes real. Prince Eugene's entire army was standing behind them, fully formed, perfectly arranged, and ready to strike. The Ottomans had walked into a trap they never saw coming. The river was at their back. The bridge was overloaded. The enemy was at their rear, and the sky was beginning to darken. The moment Prince Eugene gave the order, the quiet ridge behind Zenta erupted into motion. Imperial infantry moved first, forming long, tight lines that advanced with steady determination. Cavalry swept to the flanks, lowering lances as the last light glinted off helmets and steel. Artillery crews unhitched their guns with practice speed, planting wheels deep into soil and turning the barrels toward the densest clusters of the Ottoman camp. Across the riverbank, the Ottomans had only seconds to understand what was happening. There was no time for preparation, no time to form proper ranks. Officers shouted conflicting commands. Soldiers ran toward weapons piled near tents. Drummers tried to beat assembly signals, but their calls were drowned out by the chaos rising around them. The first cannon blast from the Imperial line tore through the confusion. It struck near the entrance to the bridge, scattering men and broken wood across the bank like toys. A second shot followed, then a third, each one hitting closer to the places where soldiers, horses, and wagons were packed tightly together. The Ottoman camp began to crumble. Janissaries attempted to form a defensive line. They pushed forward with discipline, trying to buy time, trying to steady the retreating masses. But they were too few, and the ground was against them. The camp was built in a half circle around the river. There was no open space to maneuver, no room to breathe, and the Imperial attack only grew stronger. Eugene's infantry advanced with precision, firing volleys at close range before plunging into hand-to-hand combat. Smoke rolled across the field. The sounds of battle became a single violent rhythm, muskets cracking, blades clashing, men shouting in languages from across Europe. At the center of the Ottoman position, Grand Vizier Elmas Mehmed Pasha tried desperately to restore order. He rode through the chaos, rallying units, calling officers by name, urging the Janissaries to hold their ground. But the situation was collapsing faster than anyone could control. A surge of panicked soldiers rushed toward the bridge. The narrow structure groaned under the weight of hundreds trying to cross at once. Wagons were shoved forward without drivers. Horses reared and crashed into each other. Men pushed, shouted, and climbed over anyone in their way, desperate to reach the far bank where the Sultan stood, helplessly watching. Eugene saw the pressure building and signaled his artillery to concentrate their fire on the bridge approach. The next volley struck the crowded mass. The impact shattered the final sense of control. The crowd twisted inward, crushing those at the front. Some were thrown into the water. Others jumped willingly, choosing the river over the blades behind them. And then the bridge began to fail. It started with a sag at the center, a deep bend under impossible weight. The ropes snapped. The wooden beams cracked. A section collapsed in an instant, sending men, horses, and carts plunging into the Tisza. The river swallowed entire groups at a time, dragging them beneath the surface before they could scream for help. Soldiers wearing full armor sank like stones, the weight pulling them straight to the muddy bottom where water filled their lungs while they clawed uselessly at nothing. On the far bank, Sultan Mustafa II watched the collapse in stunned disbelief. He could see the smoke rising from the camp, but distance turned the battle into a blur. He saw his soldiers crowding the bridge. He saw the collapse. He saw the water churn with bodies and debris. But he had no way to reach them, no way to cross back, no way to command the battlefield, now drowning in darkness and panic. The sun dipped below the horizon and the battlefield grew dim. Fires from exploding wagons lit patches of the riverbank. The glow revealed scenes no commander ever wants to witness. Janissaries fighting in small isolated pockets, horses thrashing in the water, abandoned cannons half submerged in mud, a river filled with debris, bodies, and shattered wood, and the Imperial army closing in from every direction. Grand Vizier Elmas Mehmed Pasha refused to retreat. He fought near the center of the camp, surrounded by a handful of loyal guards. When the final Imperial push swept through the lines, he fell with them, the highest-ranking Ottoman official to die on a European battlefield in that century. By the time full darkness settled, organized resistance had collapsed completely. The gunfire faded. The shouting grew weaker. The last survivors swam, crawled, or hid among broken wagons as the current pulled bodies away. Prince Eugene rode through the captured camp in near silence. The battle had lasted only a few hours. But in that short time, an entire imperial army had been torn apart, its bridge destroyed, its leadership broken, its soldiers scattered across two banks of a river they never finished crossing. When dawn finally broke over Zenta, the battlefield no longer looked like a place where an army had camped. It looked like a place where an army had disappeared. The smoke hung low over the river. Imperial soldiers moved carefully through the wreckage. The mud along the riverbank was thick and unforgiving. On the water, the Tisza carried away pieces of the night: floating shields, shattered planks, overturned carts, abandoned muskets, and bodies turning gently with the current. The numbers would be argued by historians for centuries, but those who stood on the shore that morning didn't need exact figures. Approximately 30,000 Ottoman soldiers had fallen or drowned in a single afternoon, killed by Habsburg muskets and artillery, crushed in the panic at the bridge, or dragged under by armor that made swimming impossible. Near the collapsed bridge, imperial officers discovered something no one expected: wagons filled with Ottoman treasure, chests of silver meant to pay the army for months, and even the Sultan's personal seal, the heart of the campaign, abandoned in panic. Eugene approached without triumph in his voice. He had won the greatest victory of his career, but the battlefield did not feel like a place for celebration. Far across the river, Sultan Mustafa II was already retreating with remnants of his personal guard. He had come to Hungary to restore the empire's pride. He left Zenta with the knowledge that the pride he sought had slipped beneath the river. Within 2 years, both empires signed the Treaty of Karlowitz, ending decades of conflict and redrawing Central European borders permanently. Zenta didn't just end a campaign, it ended an era of Ottoman expansion. A river crossing meant to carry an army forward had instead carried history in a new direction. Subscribe to Great History for more battles where perfect timing and tactical genius defeated overwhelming numbers through exploitation of vulnerability.